This gadget looked like the future, but melted your microwave. Another promised clean smoking. And smelled like burning socks. From modular cars to exploding toys, these are 20 weirdest 1980s inventions that were banned almost immediately. Number 20. The Aqued Disaster. At first glance, Aquedots looked like the perfect toy. Just spray these tiny beads with water, and boom, they'd stick together to make animals, castles, cars. But what they didn't mention on the box, if you swallowed them, you could end up in the hospital. Yep, not long after they hit store shelves, doctors started noticing something weird. Kids who accidentally swallowed Aquedots were slipping into comas. Turns out the chemical coating on the beads turned into GHB, the same stuff used as an illegal drug. Nobody knows how that made it past safety checks, but once the truth came out, it was game over. Parents freaked out, stores pulled them, and Aquedots went from Toy of the Year to banned around the world. Number 19. The Qray bracelet scam. In the late 1980s, a shiny new health breakthrough started popping up on late-night TV and magazine ads, the Qray bracelet. It looked like a sleek piece of metal jewelry, part science, part style. But the pitch was a real shocker. The Qray claimed to relieve pain, balance your energy, and restore the natural electrical flow of your body. How? Nobody could really explain it, but for $50 to $250 a pop, people didn't seem to care. It became a health fad almost overnight, with athletes and celebrities flashing their wrists like they'd unlocked the secrets of the universe. But behind the flashy ads and pseudoscientific lingo was nothing, literally. Independent studies showed zero difference between Qrays and dollar store bracelets. The Federal Trade Commission got involved, so did the courts. Eventually, a judge called it a complete fraud and ordered the makers to pay back over $22 million to customers. Number 18. The Cabbage Patch Snacktime doll. Kids loved Cabbage Patch dolls. They were cuddly, wide-eyed, and came with their own birth certificates. But in the late 80s, someone decided that what the doll line really needed was the ability to chew. So they released the Snacktime Cabbage Patch doll, a toy that used rotating gears in its mouth to eat plastic fries, cookies, and carrots. But it couldn't tell the difference between fake food and real fingers, or hair, or shirt sleeves. Once it started chewing, it didn't stop. No off switch, no safety mechanism, just a set of battery-powered jaws that grabbed and held on. Parents watched in horror as their children screamed while trying to free themselves from the doll's relentless bite. It wasn't long before the lawsuits rolled in and the Snacktime doll was yanked from shelves, never to return. Some dolls cuddle. This one devoured. Number 17. Jarts, aka lawn darts. Technically invented earlier, Jarts exploded in popularity in the early 80s thanks to backyard cookouts and a newfound love for all things dangerous. These weren't your average darts, they were foot-long metal-tipped missiles that players hurled into the air towards circular ground targets. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. Within just a few years, hospitals began reporting alarming injuries, not to legs or arms, but to heads. Children were being struck by falling darts with such force that it led to skull fractures, permanent brain damage, and, in at least 3 cases, death. Despite growing outcry, manufacturers insisted the product was safe if used properly. But parents had seen enough. By 1988, the US banned Jarts completely. If you find a set today, it's probably in someone's attic, with a warning sticker slapped on for good measure. Number 16. The Gilbert U238 Atomic Energy Lab. It's hard to believe this one was ever real, but in 1980, leftover inventory from a 1950s science kit made its way back into the public eye, thanks to secondhand stores and mail-order novelty catalogs. The Gilbert U238 Atomic Energy Lab wasn't your average chemistry set. It came with actual samples of uranium ore. The kit promised children the ability to watch nuclear reactions using cloud chambers, Geiger counters, and radioactive materials. Yes, radioactive. And no, there were no warnings on the box. The resurgence of these vintage science kits sparked a quiet panic among parents and school boards who quickly moved to have them pulled from catalogs, thrift stores, and anywhere else they were being sold. It's unclear how many kids actually got their hands on one in the 1980s, but those who did were playing with the literal building blocks of nuclear energy and potential lawsuits. Number 15. The Hoverboard Prototype. Long before Back to the Future Part 2 made them cool, hoverboards were actually being tested in secret by a small California startup. The invention, dubbed the Fly Bar, used high-powered fans to lift the rider off the ground by just a few inches. It sounded like sci-fi until someone got hurt. During early demos in 1988, testers experienced unpredictable thrust, which caused sudden jerks, flips, and collisions. One rider broke both wrists, another shattered a tooth, and one unlucky investor landed in a pond. The hoverboard wasn't banned because of any public outcry. It was banned because the insurance companies refused to back the liability. Even the most optimistic engineers couldn't convince regulators that it was safe. And so, the prototype was shelved, its brief flight cut short by gravity and lawsuits. Number 14. Anti-theft car flamethrowers. Yes, you read that right. In the 1980s South Africa, a company called Blaster invented a real working flamethrower that could be mounted to the side of your car. It wasn't meant for racing, it was designed for self-defense. The idea was simple. If a carjacker approached your window, you could hit a switch and release a burst of flames from under the driver's door. And in theory, it worked. Criminals fled. But so did insurance coverage, public support, and basic common sense. After one particularly graphic incident involving an injured teenager, countries around the world scrambled to outlaw similar devices. The idea of using fire to deter crime was deemed excessively brutal by courts and incredibly unsafe by firefighters. Blaster was banned almost everywhere by the early 90s, but for a brief fiery moment in the 80s, some cars really did come with flame-throwing accessories. Number 13. Clackers. If you were on a school playground in the early 80s, chances are you heard them before you saw them. Clackers, or as they were sometimes called, Clacks, were basically two hard acrylic balls tied to a string. You'd grip the center loop, flick your wrist, and get the balls to smack together in a hypnotic rhythm, back and forth, up and down, faster and louder with each swing. The challenge was to keep them going without losing control. The reward was a thunderous clack that echoed across classrooms and cafeterias. But that sound came with a catch, and sometimes stitches. Many clackers were cheaply made with low-grade plastic that couldn't handle the stress of repeated collisions. One bad swing and the entire toy could explode like a glitter bomb of jagged shrapnel. There were reports of kids getting cut across their hands, cracking teeth, and even suffering eye injuries when a clacker shattered mid-game. Some of the balls were so poorly weighted that they didn't need much force to snap. They just detonated. Lawsuits rolled in, safety groups panicked, schools began banning them one after another, and toy companies scrambled to re-engineer the design or quietly pull them from shelves altogether. But for a short, chaotic window in the 1980s, clackers were the soundtrack of childhood rebellion, equal parts toy, percussion instrument, and unlicensed weapon. Number 12. Sky dancers. On the surface, sky dancers were everything a toy was supposed to be in the 80s, colorful, magical, and just a little bit over the top. Each one looked like a tiny ballerina with delicate wings for arms. You'd place her into a launch base, pull the ripcord, and then watch her twirl into the air like some enchanted fairy from a Saturday morning cartoon. At first, it was pure wonder. Kids would gasp as the doll spun into the sky, flaring their wings in elegant spirals. But what came up didn't always come down gently. Sky dancers weren't exactly precision instruments. They flew fast, hard, and in whatever direction the wind or a ceiling fan decided. There were reports of kids getting hit square in the face. Some ended up with bruises, chipped teeth, and in one documented case, a mild concussion after a sky dancer launched sideways and clocked a child in the forehead. Others smashed into lamps, windows, or unsuspecting siblings. One parent recalled ducking behind the couch every time the toy was used. After over 100 injuries were reported to regulators, sky dancers were pulled from most stores and banned in several countries. The recall came fast, and not a moment too soon. But for every kid who caught a wing to the nose, there were 10 who'd still tell you it was worth it. Because for those 2 seconds of flight, it really did feel like magic. Right up until impact. Number 11. The Creepy Crawlies microwave set. The original Creepy Crawler kits were already a strange kind of fun. Pour some gloopy chemical mix into metal molds, heat them in a mini oven, and pop out rubbery little bugs and monsters. It smelled like a tire factory, but for kids in the 80s, it was a rite of passage. Then came the modern upgrade, a version that let you cook the creepy creations right in your household microwave. It sounded convenient. It was chaos. The molds were supposed to be microwave safe, but many weren't. Some warped or melted under the heat. Others leaked the goo across the microwave's turntable, fusing it to whatever meal had just come out. There were cases where the molds burst open mid-cycle, spraying half-cooked slime all over the interior. One unlucky family reported a small kitchen fire after the plastic tray caught a spark. Another had to replace their entire microwave when it began emitting a smell that wouldn't go away no matter how much they scrubbed. Parents were left with broken microwaves, traumatized dinners, and a newfound respect for the original goopy oven set. Number 10. The Vibraon Relaxation Capsule. It looked like something out of a low-budget sci-fi movie, a giant clamshell pod with blinking lights, pulsating sounds, and promises of instant relaxation. The Vibrason was marketed as the ultimate wellness breakthrough. You'd lie down inside, and a mix of vibrations, dry heat, and white noise would simulate floating through space, supposedly helping with weight loss, detox, stress, and even insomnia. But the results were far less dreamy. Customers complained of dizziness, dehydration, burns, and in one extreme case, a person passed out and had to be pulled from the machine by staff. Doctors began warning that the capsule's intense heat and vibration levels could be dangerous for anyone with heart conditions, respiratory problems, or even mild anxiety. Within a year, regulatory bodies cracked down hard, and the Vibrason was forced out of gyms, spas, and wellness clinics. Number 9. The briefcase burglar alarm. At first glance, it was a standard black briefcase, but hidden inside was a small canister of tear gas rigged to go off if someone tried to tamper with the locks. The idea was to protect your documents from thieves with a blast of irritant strong enough to blind them for minutes. It was popular with traveling businessmen and high-security couriers, especially during the corporate espionage boom of the 1980s. But it didn't take long for things to go horribly wrong. A businessman in Chicago accidentally triggered the gas in a crowded elevator. A courier in London had his case go off while reaching for a pen. And security personnel at airports? They were not amused. After a string of incidents involving startled flight crews and evacuated terminals, the briefcase was deemed too dangerous for public use. Turns out there's a fine line between protecting your files and pepper spraying an entire office. Number 8. The Gwing door conversion kits. Inspired by the DeLorean from Back to the Future, some car enthusiasts in the 80s couldn't resist trying to retrofit their own vehicles with Gwing doors, the kind that swing up vertically instead of out. A number of small companies started selling DIY conversion kits that promised to transform your boring hatchback into something straight out of a time travel movie. The problem? These kits weren't designed by engineers. Some used cheap hinges that failed after just a few months. Others weakened the car's structural integrity so badly that doors would either fly open while driving or trap passengers inside during an accident. More than one emergency crew had to cut people out with hydraulic tools after the door mechanisms jammed. Safety regulators finally stepped in, banning the more dangerous kits and placing strict limits on aftermarket modifications. What started as a tribute to cinematic cool ended up banned for very real reasons. Number 7. It'll Design Capsula. At first glance, the It'll Design Capsula looked like something out of the Jetsons, a futuristic pod on wheels that could change identities with a simple lift and swap. The concept was wild even by 1980s standards. Instead of buying different vehicles for work, family, or travel, you'd own a single base chassis with a flat platform and just switch out the cabin like changing clothes. One day, it's a delivery van. The next, a luxury passenger bubble. And if you were really bold, maybe even a mobile retail shop, but the dream ran face first into reality. These capsules weren't plug and play. They had to align perfectly with hydraulic lifts and mechanical locking systems. Any miscalculation, even a slight tilt, could mean the capsule wouldn't latch properly or worse, detach mid-drive. There were terrifying test runs where entire cabins jiggled on highways like jello molds. One infamous demonstration saw a half-secured pod roll off the platform and scrape across a parking lot, smashing into a loading dock. Insurance regulators, engineers, and even skeptical drivers all came to the same conclusion. This idea was decades ahead of its time, and not in a good way. Without proper crash safety standards for modular vehicles, the Capsula's days were numbered. By the late 80s, the project was quietly buried under layers of liability, remembered now as an icon of Italian design ambition that simply wasn't ready for the road. Number 6. Speaker vests. Long before wearable tech was cool, someone in the 80s asked the question, what if your clothes could play music? And thus, the speaker vest was born. It was equal parts denim disaster and audio experiment. The vest came wired with 2 small tweeters on the shoulders and a chunky front speaker where your chest pocket might be. A cable ran down to a cassette player clipped to your belt, and when you pressed play, your torso became the world's least effective boombox. The idea was novel, hands-free music, no headphones required. But in practice, it was a walking fire hazard with the sound quality of a dying toaster. The batteries got hot enough to singe fabric. The audio buzzed and cracked with every movement. And worst of all, the speakers faced outward, which meant everyone around you had to listen to your mixtape whether they liked it or not. Shopping malls banned them after complaints from store owners. Teachers confiscated them when kids used them to sneakily play recorded notes during tests. One student even got caught broadcasting answers across the room using his chest speaker. Parents weren't thrilled. Fire marshals were horrified. And by the end of the decade, most stores had quietly yanked them from shelves. Number 5. Premier Smokeless Cigarettes. Tobacco companies have never been known for subtlety, but in the late 80s, R.J. Reynolds decided to make a healthy cigarette by inventing one that didn't burn. That's how we got the Premier. Instead of flame, it used a carbon-tipped heating system to warm a special cartridge of tobacco and glycerin. The idea was to deliver nicotine without smoke, no tar, no fire, no ash. Just vapor. It was pitched as the future of smoking, the cleaner alternative for the modern man. What it actually delivered? A mouthful of scorched plastic and ashtray breath. The smell was so foul, it made nearby passengers on buses gag. Smokers said it tasted like a melted eraser dipped in chemicals. And non-smokers? They were downright furious. The press had a field day, with one outlet calling it a failed science experiment in a cigarette wrapper. And worse still, the product wasn't even safer. Studies showed it released similar carcinogens in different forms. Sales tanked, lawsuits loomed, and the Premier was yanked from stores faster than a lit match in a gas station. Ironically, its short-lived existence paved the way for what would later become the modern vape movement. But back then, it was too strange, too smoky, and too gross to survive. Even in a decade that embraced Tab Cola and aerosol cheese, the Premier was a step too far. Number 4, the Geometro Convertible. The 80s were all about freedom. And what says freedom like driving a convertible with the wind in your hair? So when GM introduced the Geometro Convertible, it looked like the perfect blend of economy and fun. It was cheap, light, fuel efficient, and had a roof that peeled back like a soda can, but underneath the sun-kissed image was a structural nightmare. The regular Geometro was already one of the smallest cars on the road, but once you took the roof off, the whole frame lost a big chunk of its strength. On corners, the car flexed so much, it squeaked. At highway speeds, it wobbled like jelly. And when the crash test results came in, let's just say they didn't make the marketing brochures. The rollover risk was astronomical. Emergency responders noted the doors could jam shut in even minor accidents. Insurance companies jacked up premiums or flat out refused to cover it in certain states. Some states even began pushing legislation to bar new registrations unless extra safety mods were added. Despite a few loyal fans who loved the quirky look, the convertible version didn't last long. GM quietly shelved the idea after just a few model years. Number 3, the electric AB belt. Fitness gadgets were big in the 1980s, and the electric ab belt promised six-pack abs without a single crunch. You strapped it around your stomach, turned it on, and let electrical pulses work your muscles. The commercials featured smiling models twitching happily while lounging on the couch. But the real results? Less toned, more toasted. Users reported burns, muscle cramps, and in some cases, skin damage that required medical attention. The belts were cheap, unregulated, and sold through late-night infomercials. Eventually, the FDA stepped in, issuing warnings and pushing for a recall of the most dangerous models. While electric muscle stimulation is still used today in physical therapy, it turns out doing sit-ups the old-fashioned way is still safer than zapping your stomach with a TV product. Number 2, aerosol cans with CFCs. Big hair ruled the 1980s, and hairspray ruled the shelves, but beneath the surface of every beauty routine was a real environmental threat. Aerosol cans of the time were loaded with chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, which scientists discovered were rapidly depleting the Earth's ozone layer. The link between your hairdo and planetary damage wasn't widely known at first, but as international studies rolled out and NASA confirmed a growing ozone hole over Antarctica, governments started banning CFCs in everything from deodorant to air fresheners. By the end of the decade, the Montreal Protocol had forced most manufacturers to phase out CFCs entirely. For the beauty world, it meant the end of an era, but for the planet, it may have been one of the biggest saves in modern history, because as fabulous as those hairstyles were, nothing's worth burning a hole in the sky. Finally, at number 1, instant Polaroid IDs. This one wasn't just weird, it was kind of terrifying. In the 1980s, certain states and companies experimented with making official IDs using instant Polaroid photos. The idea was simple. Snap a photo, glue it to the ID card, laminate it, and hand it over. Fast, cheap, and analog. But it was also wildly insecure. The photos were easy to tamper with. Some peeled off with water. Others could be swapped with little effort and a new layer of glue. Fraudsters began creating fake IDs using stolen blanks and home-brewed laminators. In one case, a counterfeit ring made hundreds of driver's licenses using Polaroids, Elmer's glue, and a laminating machine from Office Depot. Law enforcement quickly realized how vulnerable the system was, and the method was phased out almost overnight. Today, biometric ID systems are standard, but back then, your government ID might have been made with the same tech as your grandma's vacation scrapbook. These 20 inventions might have turned heads in the 80s, but they proved one thing loud and clear. Innovation never sleeps. even if it sometimes gets banned before breakfast. So, which one did you see? Or regret trying? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more throwbacks just like this.